Hey everybody, so today we're going to be making a clay ring bowl. Now you can use polymer clay, you can use air dry clay, you can use this homemade clay that I'm making here, which dries similarly to like pasta. It's made out of kitchen supplies. It keeps really well. You don't usually have to worry about rodents or anything to do with that either. But I'll link the actual recipe below. It's a good recipe. Just make sure that you dust your surfaces and hands with cornstarch before you handle it or use it on a surface because it will stick to everything. That was my mistake. You'll see in just a minute. But the fun thing about it is if you do get it in something, like if you use it with a kid or something and they get it in your carpet or something like that, it washes out. So you just have to scrub it with water and it breaks itself down because it's kind of like think of it like biscuit dough almost, but it hardens into a really hard, durable shell. And you can use it to make anything from beads to like ring bowls and stuff. It's great for sculpting. It's actually a really good clay. So you see me put on my gloves. This is one mistake because this clay, again, sticks to everything. It's not sticking at first, but as I went on, the more I played with it, the warmer it got, the more it stuck to my hands. And on top of that, I'm adding paint because there's several ways you can actually color this. You can use paint to keep it from turning like a yellowy color, because like I said, it is almost like pasta, so it turns a yellow. So I'm putting white paint in here because I want this to be like a marble looking ring bowl. So the white will keep it white and keep it from turning yellow. And then the small part that you saw me set aside just a moment ago, I'm going to color gray. And you're going to see in just a second, once I start mixing and the paint starts coming through the clay, you're going to see it get fairly sticky. And you'll see it even more when the gray comes. But we learn from our mistakes. But at the time, I didn't really think about using the cornstarch to dust my hands or the surface to keep it from sticking. But yeah, it ended up looking great though. So you keep mixing until the paint is thoroughly mixed through. It's hard to tell with the white paint because it looks the same from the camera. But make sure that it's mixed through as well as you can get it before you stop kneading it. Do keep in mind that this clay is an air dry clay, so the longer it sits out, the harder it gets. And it has a really long work time, but still keep that in mind. And it will take several days for it to dry, especially if it's a thicker product like this ring bowl. If you're making something smaller or thinner, it's not too bad. Also, if you use the homemade clay, even though it's great, it does shrink by about 30%. So if you want something a very specific size, it's not great for that. Make it a little bit bigger than you really want it to be once it's dry. And that way that you have the right size whenever it happens. If you're using beads if you're making beads or anything like that, make sure that whenever you make the bead, you have something in the middle the size of the hole that you want. That way, as it dries, the hole doesn't close up on you. But yeah, so the white is done, and as you can see, it's getting kind of sticky. But just wait, because here comes the gray, and it's going to get even stickier. The end result was definitely worth playing with this this clay. It was actually really fun to make, and it was really fun to use, and it did really well. It was a great product. It was just, if I had known then to use the cornstarch, it wouldn't have been so difficult to work with. Like I said again, though, we learn from our mistakes, and hopefully you do try the homemade clay because it's actually really, really good. And but it's very easy to make and use, and it's great to use with kids. You don't have to color it. I just thought that would be easier, but I could have easily just painted it afterwards. But again, the end result turned out good. It colors very, very well, but you have to remember that whatever you're coloring, it's mixing into white basically, so it's going to turn out lighter than what you think it's going to. My gray turned out about 3 or 4 shades lighter than I expected. It came out a similar color to what was in the bottle, but it was just a little bit lighter, and it wasn't that big of a deal. It still mixed into the white really well, and left streaks, so it ended up looking nice and marbled. It turned out really well. All right, so as you can see, it's starting to stick to that bag. It's sticking into my hands. I didn't want to get paint on my hands, and that's one of the reasons that I put on the gloves. But honestly, it would have been easier to wash the paint off because it's just acrylic than it was to try to get the clay off of the gloves. So in future, I'll just use my hands and just wash them afterwards. But as you can see, it's just a little bit stuck. But yeah, once I get it off of there, I'm gonna take my gloves off because it's stuck in there pretty good. So let's get rid of these gloves. Take my rings off so that the clay doesn't get stuck in those as well. And as you can see, handling the clay in your hands is not too bad. It's not super sticky, so it's not just going to stick to you, but the longer you hold it, the more it tries to bond to your skin, and it just wants to stay. So to get the marble look, I'm going to take and give it a good twist, and then smush it down. That way it gets a good swirl pattern going. And here comes some more bending and mixing. When it comes down to the actual clay, you want to, if you're doing the marble look, you want to make sure that you're mixing this, but not so much that it just turns a light gray. You want to leave streaks in it. And so I'm pulling and bending and placing the pieces together and then giving them a good squish and twist together so that it leaves streaks everywhere. And I'm trying not to overwork it. And then what I'm doing, because I want this to be a flat product that'll sit on like your dresser or something so that you can drop your rings into it or whatever whenever you're coming in from work. I've dropped it into the plate there so that it'll have a flat bottom. And then I'm pressing on the top with a plastic bag. You can totally... I wouldn't recommend dusting the top with cornstarch if you're going to be working the top, because the more cornstarch you add to it, the drier it's going to get. So I had a plastic bag that I could rub the top of it and try to get it as even as possible. And now you see the reason that I said you have to cornstarch your surfaces. So I had gotten it patted out and I had it almost done, and then I realized I needed to get it off of the plate, and then I went to grab it and it was severely stuck to the plate. So I decided to pull it off the plate and basically start back over on something that I could at least peel off the bottom once it dried. It still did not quite work because, again, I did not put cornstarch on this surface either, because at the time I did not realize that I should have done that. After it dried, I did have difficulty getting it off of the thing, but again, if you put the cornstarch on it, it should be fine. So I'm pressing this out so it's more of a bowl-ish shape. It's still going to be flat, but it'll have a ridge around the edge with divots where you can lay your jewelry around. And then in the center, I was going to put a post to stick your rings on instead of just leaving it flat. And you'll see that I changed my mind and pushed down the little post in the middle to make a little, like an earring cup for you to drop your earrings into. But yeah, I took a little bit of extra clay from that plate and rolled it up really well and stuck it in the middle for a ring post. And you can still totally do this. I just didn't particularly care for the way it looked at the moment because I was honestly getting a little bit rushed trying to stick it down onto the ring bowl. and you'll see whenever I get started putting the divot in all the way around and making sure that the rim of the bowl is high enough and everything, you'll see me kind of look at it for a second and reconsider the final product. Hindsight is 2020. I should have made the ring bowl a little bit bigger. It did dry to a decent size if you only wear like 1 or 2 rings and have like a bracelet or something to put in it. But yeah, it ended up being just a little bit smaller than I expected, and that's the reason I'm telling you it dries a little bit smaller if you use the clay that I did. But yeah, if you use a polymer clay or anything, it's a little bit more expensive, but it doesn't shrink as much, and you just pop it in the oven and it's done. You don't have to wait for it. Air dry clay, I think, dries in 1 or 2 days the last time I used it. It's been a while, but it dries fairly quickly. But I feel like it has some shrinkage as well. And there you see me pushing down the post to make the little earring cup. And I was going to make it even smaller like I am right there, but then I was like, that's too small. And then I decided to push it down into the middle since I had made a mound in the middle anyway, and made it its own little divot in the middle. It kind of ended up looking like a chip and salsa server, if you've ever seen one of those, where you put the dip in the middle and the chips around the outside, which worked out perfectly because the little well in the middle made for a great place to put your earrings, and then the outside edge you can just toss down whatever you want. But it ended up looking pretty good. You can see that the marbling technique worked really well. And so yeah, that's what it looks like. I really enjoyed making it. I loved the clay that I used. I just wish I had known to put the cornstarch down so that it didn't stick to everything. And I wish I had known to make it just a little bit bigger so that it would dry right, the right size. But overall, I'm happy with the product. I enjoyed it, and I hope you do too, because it was really, really fun to make, and it was really fun to do. It was a good afternoon project. So, as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook page. And thanks for watching. Bye!